Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Rhonda Mitchell. I'm the Executive Director of the Newport Housing Authority, and it's such a pleasure to have you here. And it is truly an honor to welcome our United States Secretary of Commerce, our former Governor, Secretary Gina Raimondo, and U.S. Senator Jack Reed. And I want to especially thank the two of you for co-hosting this event today here at the Housing Authority at Donovan Manor. I'd also like to welcome Senator Whitehouse, Governor McKee, Mayor Zai, Rhode Island Commerce Secretary Tanner, and Tommy Sheehan. I'd also like to acknowledge a few people in the audience, and forgive me, there are so many of you, I wish I could name you all. But I do want to acknowledge Senators Oyer and DePalma, Representative Abney and Rep. Carson, the members of our Newport City Council and School Committee, our City Manager, our Superintendent, the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority, and I believe I saw the Executive Director of Rhode Island Housing. So thank you all for being here today. This event is about broadband equity. And we know that affordability and access are the hallmarks of the digital divide. And we also know that for low-income families facing digital exclusion, there's a tremendous adverse impact in terms of educational achievements, health and social outcomes, and jobs and economic opportunity. And given the fact that the Housing Authority serves more than 2,000 residents, children, families, the elderly and disabled, who on average have an annual household income of $18,000 a year. And for our working families, more than 80% of our working families earn less than $25,000 a year. So we know that our residents are a part of the digital divide. And at no time were they more vulnerable than during the pandemic, when the world so quickly adapted to remote learning, remote working, and telehealth services. And it was at that point that I received an urgent call to action from our Housing Authority resident, our Housing Authority Commissioner, the President of the High-Low Neighborhood Association, Tommy Sheehan, who was so concerned about social isolation and furthering that digital divide. That Tommy not only offered his partnership to the Housing Authority, but with the High-Low Association, he offered to take the lead on the effort to achieving broadband equity. And so the Housing Authority was able to partner with an incredible technology firm, Ocean, led by Dave Marble, Mark Montalto, and their incredible team. And they helped us to map out a vision for broadband. And then Tommy and the High-Low Association donated their incredibly talented grant writer, Dennis Sheehan, who wrote some pretty compelling proposals that allowed the Housing Authority, in partnership with the High-Low, to get over $1 million in broadband funding. And so this building where we are at Donovan Manor, all 100 residents in this building have free, reliable, high-speed internet access, and they have for the last year. And the balance of those funds is going to bring us out to Park Home, our community center at the Florence Gray Community Center, some of our other elderly and disabled properties. But it's these new, the BEAD monies that are coming through for equity that will allow us to ensure that every resident at the Housing Authority, the 300 families that we've not yet been able to serve, will all have access not only to the high-speed, reliable internet access, but also to the devices and to the digital skills training needed to use that internet. So thank you, Secretary Raimondo, our delegation, Senator Reed, and to all of you who are champions of broadband equity. We really appreciate you. if I could ask Senator Reid to please come forward and speak. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Rhonda, for your great leadership and those very eloquent words. Madam Secretary, it is always a pleasure to see you back in Rhode Island, particularly when you're bringing 108. This legislation was passed under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act under the leadership of President Biden, but the critical leadership of Secretary Raimondo. Without her efforts constantly to get this legislation moving when it hit snags, we would not be here today. And again, I thank her for that and so much more. Let me thank Rhonda Mitchell, who's the Executive Director of the Newport Housing Authority, for hosting this event, and also the residents of Donovan Manor for letting us share a little bit of your space for the afternoon. It is really great to see smart investments in digital infrastructure paying off, and they are. They're building stronger connections, they're expanding opportunity. We had a really good meeting with some of the residents, and for the first time they're able to use virtual health care because they have access to broadband. They can use the broadband facilities to fill out forms to qualify for programs that otherwise would take a lot of time and effort trudging around doing that. So we are here to look forward to not only Donovan Manor, but all of Rhode Island to be fully wired in. And this would not have happened without the great effort of Senator Whitehouse, whose persistence and drive made it happen in the Senate. And of course, Governor McKee has really jumped ahead and taken this on and is going to lead from the front, as he always does. Mayor Zai, thank you very much for your leadership. Commerce Secretary Tanner, and ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, welcome to the Tommy Shan Show. One of the great things about this state, this city, this country, is an individual like Tommy decides he wants to do something to help other people. And he works hard, he connects, he gets people to listen, and suddenly he forms his High-Low Neighborhood Association back in 2018. They start working, and we have now in this building safe, reliable internet that is not charged to the consumer. So thank you for that, Tom. Last November, many of us gathered at the Providence Public Library to announce the $5.5 billion planning grant. And the Secretary of Commerce, Liz Tanner, and the Governor and their team have been using that money very wisely to lay the foundation for 100% connectivity in the state of Rhode Island. And now with this $108 million, the resources are there to implement the plan. And I know they're going to do it well, and they're going to do it wisely. This is going to be a great dividend, not just for individuals, but for our whole community. Today, realistically, a child can't go to school unless they have access to the internet. There's just too many things that young boy or girl has to do that is connected to the internet. You can't apply for a job nowadays without getting on the internet. It's not like my youth where you handed the clipboard across the door. Don't call our school, call you. This, you got to be on the internet to do it. So this is life-changing. And in this interconnected world, we're globalized. One of the nice things that was said today, too, by one of our participants was, this allows them to stay connected to their children and family all over the country. And that wasn't possible a few years ago. So this interconnectivity, this community that we're building is going to be incredibly important for all of us. And we're ready to seize this opportunity. The governor's staff is prepared, the money's coming in, and it's now ready to literally take off. With that, let me introduce the 40th Secretary of the Department of Commerce, our former governor, and someone I've known for a while. Ladies and gentlemen, Secretary Raimondo.
Thank you, Senator. It is wonderful to be here. I have to say, as I sit here and look around the room, so many of you I miss working with you, and it's wonderful to be home. I spent on Monday, I was with the President when he made the announcement of the $42 billion, and I spent the week all over the country, in Kentucky and Minnesota, and I saved the best for last. It is wonderful to be in Rhode Island. I do. It's wonderful to be with the governor and with the mayor and Secretary Tanner and the famous Tommy. Exactly. I have a Tommy. I told that to Tommy. But I have to tell you, Senator Reid was saying, you guys like me because I'm here to give out $108 million. There is something you need to know, which is that Rhode Island punches above its weight in Washington because of Senator Reid and because of Senator Whitehouse. In the thick of the negotiation of this bill, there was a big formula. And had that formula been put in place, Rhode Island wouldn't have gotten anything close to this much. But these two guys were in the ring late at night, in the weeds, saying there has to be what's called a small state minimum. And the small state minimum was $100 million. Yeah. So please join me in thanking them. Jack Reed, you know who I'm talking about. It's true, but that's, in the weeds of bureaucracy, but you need to know when no one's looking what they're doing down in Washington, because that small state minimum is what we need and deserve in the state of Rhode Island, and it wouldn't have happened. As has already been said, the internet isn't a luxury anymore. It's a necessity. It really is a necessity. We had an opportunity to just sit with some of the residents, and it was, thank you for sharing your stories. But like the senator just said, you can't apply for a job if you're not online. You can't do your homework. You can't see the doctor. You can't pay your bills. And increasingly that'll be the case. And this world of haves and have-nots, the divide's going to get bigger. And if you don't have, you thinking about the school kids, if you don't have access to the internet at a price you can afford, then you're going to be left behind. And what President Biden has said is that, just like electricity, once upon a time in the rural South, people didn't have electricity, and then we electrified. We said this is the greatest country in the world. Everyone deserves electricity. This is the greatest country in the world, and everybody deserves the internet. And that's what this is about. In Rhode Island, there are about 3,000 locations of people who are unserved or underserved. So, and many in Aquidneck Island, that's why we're here, by the way. Many in Aquidneck Island, many in Foster Gloucester. They're not really have snow. They don't have a lot of internet. So, rural areas of Rhode Island. But truthfully, 3,000, with $108 million, you can do more than just connect 3,000 people. So the issue in Rhode Island is affordability. A lot of people have access to the internet. Their home or their community is connected, but they struggle to afford it, right? They struggle to afford it. $80, $90, $100, $150 a month, you might as well not have it. So I know that the governor and Secretary Tanner have great plans working with partners like housing authorities, like libraries, like Boys and Girls Clubs, like schools, to make sure the internet is free and available. So for every Rhode Islander, it is within their grasp. That is what we at the Commerce Department are committed to doing with you, in concert with you. And I just couldn't be more excited to do that. I just had to say one more thank you, since I am in Rhode Island. In the thick of this negotiation a couple of years ago, I had a great Rhode Islander by my side, which is Kevin Gallagher. I took Kevin with me from the governor's office to Washington, and he was right there with me helping to negotiate this broadband package. So I want to say thank you, Kevin. And also Barbara Cotta, who I lost, she's in the back there, I also managed to convince her to come to Washington. And I am so proud of you guys, because together, under the President's leadership, we're changing America forever with this investment, and I love the thought of this Rhode Island crew being right in the middle of it. It's my great pleasure to introduce somebody who needs no introduction because we're on his home turf, but who I've loved working with, and not only when I was governor, he was very close to me then, but now as secretary on things related to broadband, but also all things related to oceans and climate. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse.
Well, it is a treat to have not one but two Secretaries of Commerce. Our very own and the United States one. And as we go into the July 4th weekend, it's a particularly happy reunion for me to see the Rhode Island Washington Commerce crew assembled here. As has been said, the internet is now infrastructure. And the infrastructure we're most familiar with is roads, right? So imagine if the road didn't come to your house. Or imagine if the only road that came to your house was a toll road. And before you could go out on it, you had to pay. That wouldn't be very fair infrastructure, and it wouldn't be very useful infrastructure. So with this $108 million that has come from the Secretary of Commerce through to the governor so that Secretary Tanner can dispense it here in Rhode Island, we're going to try to solve that problem. And I couldn't be happier about it. And since it's key to have Governor McKee solve this problem, let me invite him to come.
Yeah, thank you so much, and happy 4th of July, everyone, right? And this is what a great place to be, and as we lead into that weekend, talking about this opportunity that we have in the country because of President Biden and Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo. Thank you so much. That's where to start. I mean, I did get a call from the President on election night, and long and short of this discussion was us small states need to stick together. And by the way, he did put a little plug in that it certainly helps to have a Secretary of Commerce from the state of Rhode Island. So we know that in the White House, Rhode Island is well familiarized, right? People know about Rhode Island. We're certainly building that relationship, and we can't get to where we are right now with the opportunities we have in the state of Rhode Island with momentum, as I said, like we've never seen before, and we're going to take advantage of that without a congressional delegation that actually steps up prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and as we have that long in the rearview mirror right now. So thank you so much for Senator. And Senator, along with our congressman, we have one congressman right now, but we're going to get a second one. Like, so, is that right, Rep? So, and then I would also say, look at the importance of this whole idea of using all our resources, all our assets, to be right here in Newport with Mayor Zai and of course the council, and as well as the reps and senators that are here representing Newport. What a great place to be. We know that when we had the gas outage a few years ago, I was walking around with Lynn door to door, business to business. But we also were very apparent through the leadership in the General Assembly, speaking on behalf of the people on Quinnipiac Island in particular, that there was a problem here, a problem on connectivity. And that's why we met a few months ago, a year ago, so put some money on the line and started. I'm so pleased to hear the comments that were made by the residents in this building. They actually say, we made an announcement we were going to do something, Rhonda, right? And we actually got it done in a way that is really, helpful. And that's what I'm here today, to say as governor. We know how important things are. I can't leave the mic without talking about the Learn 365 RI program that we have in place right now. This connectivity is going to be phenomenal. Right now, we have over 90% of the state's population represented by municipalities that have signed that compact to meet or exceed Massachusetts levels in terms of education by 2030, and also making sure that we increase the attendance and increase the FAFSA applications, which actually happen online, by the way, right, the FAFSA applications. So when we talk about the 3 goals that we have currently in the state on the Rhode Island 2030 plan, which is to raise academic outcomes, raise incomes, and it's appalling, quite frankly, that we have so many people in that income level that you just described. And we need to do everything we can to raise those incomes. And then finally, we need to be healthy enough to actually enjoy living in this great state that we live in right now in the state of Rhode Island. So with that, I think I'm introducing the mayor. Is it the mayor? Yeah, the mayor's coming up. Yeah. Come on up, mayor. Tell us what's going on.
Normally when I'm in this room, I'm rushing along my remarks because I'm the last speaker between a room full of residents and seniors and a holiday meal of some sort. It's a little bit more intimidating to be between a room full of people who've worked very, very hard for an initiative like this and a long weekend, so I won't take too long here. First, I know they were mentioned earlier, but I have to mention by name my fellow city councilors, Vice Chair Lynn Segley, City Councilor Jean Napolitano, the former mayor, and of course, our 3rd Ward Councilor, David Carlin. It is their partnership and through local government that we get a lot of these things implemented. They are critical partners. And I'd also like to recognize my fellow school committee members who are here, Louisa Boatwright, Becky Boland, and Kendra Munter. Thank you so much for your partnership on many of the initiatives that we take on. Secretary, welcome home. When I saw you last, we ran into each other in the White House, and it almost felt like running into each other when we were walking through the old family neighborhood, right? And you said, Zai, anything I can do to help Newport, we're going to do. And to a lot of us in politics, that just sounds like politician speak. But before I was even back home, I had an email from your office. And 2 days later, I had a conference call set up. And it feels like every single week from that point forward, I received a call with a different program or a different way to help. And so whether it was helping work with our State Commerce Office to have the Regional Broadband Summit held right here in Newport, or opportunities with grant funding, it is such a breath of fresh air to have federal government partners and state partners who are constantly thinking about ways to help local leaders. Now, Senators Reid and Whitehouse, I thank both of you as well because you make sure that our delegation stays focused on making sure that Newport gets every single bit that it can. And this program, as the Secretary mentioned earlier, is a great example of that. Access to fast, reliable, and affordable internet is not just a luxury for our communities, you heard everybody here say. It's a necessity. I think a lot of us realized that during the pandemic when we felt what it was like to actually be disconnected. Doctor's appointments, school, work, these all became things that started happening remotely. And since we've come out of the pandemic, that's continued. And so now, if you don't have access to the internet, you're up a creek without a paddle. And the residents here at Donovan Manor have as great a need for that affordable access to internet as our neighbors across the way in the mansions on Bellevue Avenue. What's so striking here is that you stand in a neighborhood where the majority of our population here, right, that are in our working neighborhoods are below the federal poverty line, where many of them have a lack of access to affordable internet. And so programs like this that help close that gap are critically important to us helping to build stronger communities. Now, you've heard an awful lot about Tommy Sheehan. You're going to hear from the man, the myth, the legend, and person of you. And so I want to recognize somebody different. A man who helped keep Newport as a city plugged in throughout the pandemic and through a number of crises. Jim O'Halloran has served as the city's IT director for a number of years, and today is his last week working. Before every council meeting, I look up into the balcony and I say, Jim, are we ready to go? And he says, we're good to live stream, because he's the person who's there till all hours making sure that through the internet, the public can see our meetings. He's the person who, when our school department was hit with a virus, helped sort that all out. And he's the person who rebuilt our IT system from the ground up when we were devastated by a cyber attack a couple of years ago. And right now, most recently, he's been focused on how we expand the fiber that we have in our community on a day-to-day basis. And so, Jim, once we wrap up with these remarks after the last speaker, I'm going to present you with a key to the city to recognize not only the work that you do, but all civil servants. See, up until now, the work of closing the digital divide has fallen on the shoulders of volunteers and civil servants who've been scrapping it together with whatever funding and grants that they can identify. But I have some good news today. Thanks to our federal partners here, the cavalry has arrived to the tune of $100+ million. And so things are going to be getting better. But gentlemen, thank you so much for all of your work. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our State's Commerce Secretary.
Hello everyone, so great to be in Newport to see all of you. Welcome home, Secretary Raimondo. It was a pleasure to see Senators Rhode at Whitehouse, Governor McKee, who I see all the time, it feels like, the mayor's eye, and of course the residents of Donovan Manor. And Rhonda, thanks so much for hosting us today. And I get to introduce Tommy, but let me try to get into my speech first. I was so thrilled to hear earlier this week about Rhode Island receiving almost $109 million to bridge the digital divide and make sure everyone in Rhode Island is connected to affordable and reliable high-speed internet. Getting better broadband access across the state has been a focus project of mine for many years under Governor Raimondo and then Governor McKee, and I'm so excited about what this does mean for Rhode Island. One of the reasons that I've been so passionate about this and what brought me into this conversation years ago all around broadband is the use and idea that you could use the internet for streamlined government services through smart technology. It is imperative that we cut red tape and streamline our government services to be easy to use online for both our residents and our businesses. That is why the state has also invested $10 million in digital government initiative to make the services for real people and real businesses, whether it's to renew a license or to file a permit, to make those processes faster, easier, and more intuitive. As you've heard from others, internet access is the next generation infrastructure and everything that underpins it. It's an enabler. It's an enabler for educational attainment and job mobility. It can help combat loneliness and allow for aging in place, and it can drive government transformation and inclusive economic development. We also know we need to make sure that every one of our residents and businesses has an affordable, reliable internet connection along with the confidence to use it. But that can only happen when you have good broadband access. And so in Rhode Island, we are ready to hit the ground running with this BEAD funding, as well as the $25 million in capital projects fund allocation that we received in Governor McKee's most recent budgets as well. Rhode Island has a strong backbone and architecture in this. It will allow us to close any remaining gaps, and we truly desire to also make Rhode Island stand out from all the rest in broadband access. We can leverage this funding and fiber, and it will enable us to add the ability to drive new industry growth and ensure that everyone and everywhere in this state will have the same access. This is a once-in-a-lifetime investment and an opportunity that will yield a lifetime's worth of impacts in Rhode Island. So I just want to thank, of course, again, Secretary Raimondo, the Commerce Department, NTIA, Kevin, who's been such a huge asset, the Biden administration, and others for investing in Rhode Island. And so with that, I have the great pleasure of introducing Tommy Sheehan, President of the Newport Housing Authority, High-Low Association, and an amazing advocate for affordable, equitable, high-speed internet access. Tommy, I've heard your story before, and it's really incredible. You've been the champion of the project that we're celebrating today since its conception, and it's my honor to ask you to say a few words. Thank you.
Okay, here I am. You know, I think when I think of Rhode Island, it's a small state, but how big we can be. And this is an idea born in the pandemic. But before I start, I need to thank my mother and father, who instilled in myself and my brother to give back to the community. It started with my brother, Dennis. Stand up. Come on. That's my brother, Dennis. I'm the idea guy. He does all the work. He gave up his time selflessly, and of course with Rhonda Mitchell, who lives the mission, you know, cares about the residents. You know, I'm always coming up to it with these ideas, and I can always see in the back of it like, oh God, it's more work. And we don't need to create that. Thank you so much. She's never said no. When the idea was born, just over there. My sister works at the Pell School. She's a social worker there, and I'm thinking, these kids are screwed. If you're buffering, I'm buffering as an adult and I'm done. So we decided to walk across, and there I met Mark Montalto from the Ocean Network. I didn't know about lateral pull latency, APs, all of that. So his patience and understanding. The Ocean Network are true partners with us. I think all the housing authorities across the state are so fortunate to have you. Thank you so much. And then what I've discovered in this journey is that the people in government, you live the mission, and it blows me away because you don't think that. And I'm like, so Danielle Fairchild, oh, hi! Daniela gets it. And right from the beginning, just gently pushing us, right? Well, try it this way, just try it that way. Thank you. There's people that you move along with that it doesn't happen. You know, I get to be the face of it. But, and then so moving forward, you know, we would talk with Rhonda. So now the Newport Housing Authority is connected, and now we have the rest of the North End, and that's where Mayor Sy comes in, Dawn, Lauren. So I really appreciate the way that you all are true partners with this. I'm really honored to be here. You know, that little idea. And so, Secretary Raimondo, I got to tell you, so whenever you're on TV, I go, oh, that's... and that's the nature of Rhode Island, right? And like, I know them. And I don't think that happens anywhere else. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Governor. We met a year ago. He says, you're an enthusiastic guy. I sure am. You know, finally, I'm the president of High Low Neighborhood Association. Rebecca's here with us. She's on our board. The residents, so we're in our home right now. I'm a housing authority commissioner, but I'm a resident. Having housing has changed my life. A safe, affordable housing. So I can think again. So I really appreciate all the programmings. I want you to know that they're a success. Thank you.
I wasn't wrong. The Tommy Sheehan Show. We'd be happy to take questions on this topic. If you have other issues, we're available afterwards. But are there any questions on this topic? Yes, Ryan.
Secretary, hello. You mentioned traveling the country to promote this program and others. What are you finding across the country compared to Rhode Island? Would you try to sell these policies in maybe other places that aren't as friendly to the industry?
Yeah, nice to see you. So, you know, this week I was in Kentucky, for example, and I was very warmly received because I was giving away $1.1 billion. I then went to Minnesota to give away $650 million. I had colleagues in Texas, which is getting over $3 billion. And you know what the president always says, which one of the reasons I admire him, he said, you know, I'm the president for everybody, red states and blue states. And the truth of it is, of the millions of people who aren't connected, many live in red states because they're rural states. And so our mission at the Commerce Department is to invest this money in partnership with governors all over the country without regard for politics and connect every American. What I realized two things. One, it's really different in every state, right? Like the challenges to connect everyone in a place like Rhode Island are so different from anywhere else. And the same is true for Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, wherever. Which is why we designed this program to be flexible and work with the governors. Every state has to give us a plan. We approve of the plan and then the money flows. The second thing I realized is you just get to talk to people and hear how their lives are really tough because they don't have the internet or they can't afford it. And so for me, it motivates me to get out there, get the work done, and finally connect the millions of Americans who deserve it and don't have it.
Secretary, while we have you up here, sorry, Zane Wolfang, Newport Daily News and Providence Journal. I was hoping that you could maybe explain in like very basic terms for your average news consumer here in Rhode Island how these unserved and underserved areas are determined with these FCC maps, without getting in the weeds, but like just a very basic maybe kind of overview of what an underserved or unserved area is and how the government decides that.
Unserved means no internet, right? So there's no company that provides service to that region, or so no matter what you're willing to pay, you can't get it. Underserved means you can get it, but it's low quality. So it's a bad connection. So that's our priority. Unserved first means nothing. Underserved is you can get it, but it's spotty. You can never do Zoom. You can't do streaming, the whole thing. And then the next category is affordability, and that's where it's at for Rhode Island.
I wanted to ask you if there's any determination in this underserved category of areas that have a monopolistic provider or have no choice in provider, if that would also constitute being underserved.
Yes and no. So it depends on the quality that they provide. So if it's a monopolistic provider that's providing poor quality service, then we can deal with that with this money. Or a monopolistic provider providing service at an utterly unaffordable price, then that's something we can deal with. We want to encourage competition wherever possible, and we want to hold the providers accountable who are going to receive our money.
Thank you, Secretary.
Secretary Raimondo, have overtures been made nationally to the large ISPs like Verizon on something of a national level to gain national scale in terms of pricing? And/or how closely and how cooperative have they been for a process that they largely assume was their own?
Yes. The answer is yes. I have personally met with the CEOs of all the biggest ISPs and cable companies, and we are very clear with them that they need to provide affordable plans, and that if they're going to be the recipients of taxpayer money, we expect affordable plans, and an affordable plan is not $100 a month. There's another program called the ACP, not to get into the weeds, but it's essentially it's a $30 monthly stipend to lower income folks. And so we have gone to every big company, and they've all agreed to accept that $30 a month program. And what we've said to them is, for some people, you provide it for $30 a month, you accept their ACP, and that means it's free. So we are really holding their feet to the fire. And we intend to do that. But the last thing I'll say is, and I trust totally the governor and secretary to do this, and the mayor, use this money to make it free for Rhode Islanders, right? Like, connect every housing authority for free. Connect every, public, or as you see fit, every high-rise, affordable housing high-rise, every YMCA Boys and Girls Club, every school, every library. You can use the money for pure affordability.
My question would be to sort of bounce off that for the Rhode Island delegation. If Newport did create this sort of magical matrix of getting our people here, is there a plan to use this as the benchmark to roll it out? Like, there's no reason the other 25 housing authorities should start from scratch. You seem to have like an opportunity to capture thousands of people who are already on the rolls of the other 25 housing authorities.
So one of the things that's great about Rhode Island is a couple years ago, the Rhode Island Housing Office passed a new rule that any new housing development that was created had to have free internet for every resident. So we know that that's happening on a go-forward basis, and that's already on its way. In the meantime, yes, they are working to try to implement something similar to what Secretary Raimondo was talking about with a $30 a month plan in each of them. So those conversations are ongoing. They're not everywhere across the state. There's still funding that needs to be put to that. But we are working on our plan. So we received the $5.5 million as a planning grant for us to figure out how are we going to spend these dollars. And then just with this announcement on Monday, now we know how much we're receiving, and now we can finally start to, starting next year, implement that plan. So it will be coming in the future.
Secretary Yannick, when can we expect to see some sort of, I'll call it a heat map, where you'll see a distribution, now that you've got a budget, a distribution of services across the state? Again, recognizing the challenging difference between a Foster Gloucester and, well, Central Falls.
So we've actually received over 1 million tests from residents and businesses who showed us what their broadband access is, and we're compiling all that data, and ultimately we'll be able to use that as part of our planning grant that we submit to NTIA to determine how we'll spend those dollars.
Thank you very much. It will be around for a while. Thank you all, and happy 4th of July.
Sorry, here. I had a spot right here. Yeah, take mine.
Everyone's great.
Governor, will you be taking questions?
Manager, and they need to be making sure that they're doing like the upgrades necessary.
Governor, will the governor be taking questions? Governor. Governor, have you decided what you're going to do with these Tidewater Landing land now? Have you tasked Commerce with finding a replacement for the project? Is it now finally, will you admit it's in free fall? Nope. Well, that was a hasty retreat.
Yeah, we're good.
Any comments on the Tidewater Landing project? Anyone? I've got a comment. I told you so. So folks, the governor basically fled out of the room, unwilling to answer any questions. His staff, unwilling to take any questions. Disappointing. So much at stake. Any comment on Philly? Nope. Oh, could you hold that? Need to get back into the meeting room.
The meeting room?
Yeah.
You want to go this way? It's kind of...
If that's easier, if you don't mind. Whatever. Thank you.